Greetings, everyone. I am Rafael Caso, and welcome to Aim to Thrive, Wellbeing Education for the Construction Industry, where we learn life skills to move from a surviving to thriving mindset. Wellbeing empowerment through education. So, the past few years have been extremely tough on business owners and their workers. The disruption COVID presented to many businesses pushed many individuals to breaking point emotionally and financially. Merely throwing a bunch of mental health resources at workers is not going to provide the support that they require. Companies need to create a culture that supports mental health so leaders have the confidence to have an open conversation about mental health. And through this transparency, leaders can better alter workplace practices to reduce stress and create a thriving culture. Leadership and creating a culture of well-being is today's topic, and it is my pleasure to welcome Aly McNicoll, a professional leadership coach and trainer from the New Zealand Coaching and Mentoring Centre. Aly, welcome to Aim to Thrive.
Thanks, Raphael, and great to be here.
Yeah,
I know the construction industry is going through the tough time at the moment, and they're just picking up. The problems are complex, so I think we do need complex solutions, not just little strategies that will fix things.
Yeah, we're excited to listen to what you have to say. So, Aly, can you begin with telling us a little bit about yourself and your leadership coaching business?
Sure. Well, we are New Zealand Coaching and Mentoring Centre based here in Auckland, work throughout Asia Pacific with a wide range of organisations actually. We want to be a little bit more strategic in how they use coaching, mentoring, coaching approaches to leadership, to really help people step up to the challenges that are present today. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Aly, how do you define leadership and how does leadership differ from management?
I'll tell you my favourite definition of leadership, Raphael, is that leadership is literally stepping up and owning results. Sure. And can happen at any point in an organisation, wherever someone has to step up and own results. That's leadership, actually. And pretty much leaders who think like that pretty much say, I'll work with whoever I need to work with, I'll learn whatever I need to learn, I'll do whatever I need to do to step up and own those results. And I think the big thing leaders have to do today is help every individual, every team step up and own results as well. That seems to me the act of leadership, helping others to step up.
Yeah, fantastic. How is the style of leadership changing and what are the driving factors for this change, Aly, do you feel?
I mean, we've been working with leaders probably for the last 20 years, and I've seen leadership go through a number of phases. But definitely recently, it's the coaching approaches to leadership, really helping leaders think and act like natural coaches, taking coaching approaches to the wide range of conversations that they have. And I just think that word, the coaching word, we have borrowed from the sports sector. And if you think of the sports coach, it's not just about getting people to do the right technical skills. It's about the mindset. It's about teamwork. It's about, winning attitudes. So helping people be the best they can be, actually. And I was thinking, even though construction industry, very practical, there's important results, it still seems to me that there's probably no substitute for great people. If you can attract and hold on to great people, then, huge impact on the quality of your results.
Yeah, look, absolutely. How does leadership shape a company culture? And what are the challenges a company faces if the wrong leadership style and that culture is implemented? What are the long-term effects of poor leadership?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that culture really does start from the top. It really reflects the values of the senior leaders. And I think it has been a bit of a neglected piece of the leadership puzzle, really, the acknowledgement that big part of the leader's job is to build and maintain the culture that will allow people to do their best work. and keeping an eye on those culture killers as well, just some of the things that happen naturally with humans that can really get in the way of great culture, incivility, rudeness, just some of the interpersonal dynamics that can happen within teams and organizations has a huge impact on the culture. And you've probably heard that famous leadership maxim that culture eats strategy for lunch. That's really borne out in my experience. No matter what fabulous ideas you have, if the culture doesn't support the implementation, then culture always wins. And I have found myself saying to leaders lately that if you don't set the culture, then the people will set the culture. And that is not always ideal. So being a little more intentional about culture.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Aly, there's more discussion about companies adopting a wellbeing culture for their workers. In your opinion, how do companies benefit with a greater focus in wellbeing?
Yeah, it's interesting just the languaging using, that word mental health is a bit of a scary term for a lot of people who aren't professionals. Even the word well-being, a bit of a, got a little bit of emotional pull to it. But so I like to just think of caring, cultures that are caring. I like to think of people who care about each other in the workplace while they're going about the work. I like to think about workplaces being places where people can arrive in the morning, contribute, enjoy their time there and walk away feeling like they've done something important at the end of the day. And to me, that is what impacts on well-being. And there's some fantastic research, probably the largest global engagement study really looked at what was going on in highly engaged, highly performing teams. And interesting finding was that they found that no matter what drew people to an organization or to a role in the first place, it was actually their experience in their immediate team with their immediate leader that impacted most on their engagement, on their enjoyment in the workplace. And I just think that's a huge message for leaders it's really our job to create conditions, to create cultures within our teams where people do feel comfortable, where they can step up and do what's asked of them and enjoy the process really. And just was thinking also about the way team members care for each other and how we promote that within teams. One of the big indicators around engagement elements that were present in those highly engaged teams was my teammates have my back, was one of the most important things. And once again, I was thinking about the sports team, how everyone has everyone's back. Someone drops a ball, everyone dives in, to pick it up. They don't sort of go, that's not my job, or hang other players out to dry, really. So to me, that's really what creates well-being, people's sense of safety, security within an environment.
Is that something that's teachable, Aly, or like how would you sort of go about helping individuals to sort of be a more caring type of person in a leadership role, or is that more of a personality trait? What do you think?
Look, in my experience, it's definitely teachable. We have some quite short, very practical leaders as coaches courses. And we can just pass on to people some really useful mindsets and skill sets that make a huge difference. And I don't know about construction industry, but many organizations I work with, they kind of take their best people. They say, you're great at your job, lead the others. And then we forget that it is a whole new discipline, a whole new skill set to help people step up into that leadership space. And without just falling back on their own resources, really. So there's definitely tools and skills that help, but it's also about learning to think and act like a leader.
Yeah, sure thing. And what evidence is there for the effectiveness of good leadership? How does a company how do people in leadership or more in the director's sort of role, how do they sort of gauge where they're at? What's the best sort of advice you can sort of provide for people?
There is a whole field now called positive psychology that is really looking at well-being in workplaces, very evidence-based research about what creates well-being and how we can create the conditions for well-being as leaders. So the research is increasingly coming through. And I think to me, it's about getting the balance right between leading for results, getting the work done that we need, and leading relationships, having the quality of relationships, and kind of getting a nice balance of those, and kind of starting to trust that if you've got good quality relationships with your people, that will impact on results, that will impact on them staying in the role, feeling more comfortable there, and delivering well, contributing well.
Yeah, great.
I'll tell you an interesting bit of research, Raphael. Google did a massive bit of research with groups and teams because they absolutely rely on their groups and teams for innovation, and found that teams that scored highly on psychological safety did better on every other criteria.
Wow.
So for them, it became a foundation stone of high performance, was just how comfortable people felt in their team, with their leader, with their colleagues, that they could be themselves, speak up if they need, ask questions without fear of consequence or, embarrassment, rejection, those sorts of things. And once again, I think we see that reflected in sports teams, in high performing sports teams, that huge support for each other, that unconditional support. And yeah, to me, that's fundamental to wellbeing as well.
Fantastic. What steps can companies, big and small, take to improve their leadership style to create a culture where managers, workers, and the business thrives?
I think it is about investing more time. I get to work with teams as well. And I just find that teams don't invest much time at all in talking about how we're going to work together, how this teamwork will work. And so over time, things do break down. I think it's the same with leadership, particularly in the very practical sectors, that we don't take enough time to talk about leadership, what our approach is going to be as an organisation, to support our leaders to take positive approaches to their leadership. And I think probably one of the things we don't talk enough about is how we talk to each other as well within organisations. So I think it is about investing a bit more time. Certainly leadership development really makes a difference. We rolled out a mentoring program in our Air Force a few years ago, and at the morning tea, we were training the mentors. At the morning tea point, the base commander came in and gave a really fantastic speech to the group of mentors just to launch the program, and very impressive. And one of his people came up to me after and said, "What did you think of him?" And I went, "Wow, very impressive man. I wish he could open all of our mentoring program sessions." And he said to me, "We used to hate him." And I went, "Oh, what happened?" He said, "He went on a leadership program." And I just thought that was an interesting little story of someone just being turned around through education, through a good quality development process. He just thought he had to be tough to be a good leader, and realized he didn't through the program.
Fantastic. Aly, the construction industry in New Zealand and Australia, it's got big challenges with many workers with poor mental and physical health, a history of far too many workplace accidents and ACC claims. Workers, unfortunately, have a real survival, not all of them, but a lot of them have a real survival mindset. They're just trying to make it through to the end of the day, to the end of the week. How can these business owners turn this mindset around so their workers have a more thriving mindset? And what role does leadership take to turning this around?
I think once again, the positive psychology folks have got some great answers to that question. And I might pop in a really useful website when we post this podcast for you to share with people, because there's for instance, a lovely little leadership assessment tool that you can check your levels of care as a leader, for instance, and really pick up some practical tools and tips from the positive psychology. To me, I think it is probably a bit of a mixture of the things we've been talking about, of really attending to the conditions that create engagement in your teams. I'm just trying to think of the other eight elements that existed disproportionately in those highly engaged teams. my teammates have my back was one. Clear expectations was another big one for people, knowing exactly what's expected of them. And if we can just really help leaders take a positive approach to their leadership, adult to adult, let's get rid of any punitive approaches. When people feel that they have to watch for consequences, then they do start to go under the radar, and that's really when the errors happen, the accidents happen. And I had one fabulous leader on one of my courses a few years ago from the construction industry, and he had a bunch of very simple but useful strategies, because he had quite a few young people, apprentices. And for instance, one of them was he had 5x5 talks, he said. Now, I don't know if that is a wood size or not, but he said literally before they start a job with, before one of his young people starts a job, they take 5 steps back and take 5 minutes just to look at the job, to talk about the job, to make sure he was clear on what he was doing and if he had any questions. I just think it's those little strategies, things like that, if we can sprinkle those through everybody's workday, where they do feel they have that support that you would have from an experienced coach or mentor. If our leaders can be more coach-like, then that's going to make a huge difference for every person's experience in their role.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, just touching on that, I often visit a lot of construction sites, and with a lot of the workers there, I generally ask them, what would it take to create a more thriving sort of mindset for themselves? And then surprisingly, I always think it's going to be, I'm expecting a more tangible, response with, maybe, put on a barbecue or something like that at lunchtime. But then something that was reoccurring was where a lot of the young guys, a thriving mindset for them is education. A lot of them, they don't want to sort of have they want to be challenged with more technical aspects to their role. And that was really interesting to me, because I sort of thought, well, that opens up a big conversation. It's something that I myself can't sort of solve for them, because our workers are mostly contractors that I'm working with. But I sort of thought, well, this is something that needs to sort of almost go back to the company owners, where a lot of these young guys, they want a pathway to further education. They don't want to plateau with their skill set. So is there anything more on that you feel that you could sort of add?
Well, that was another one of the 8 elements. I need to be challenged and growing. I need to feel like I'm growing. And to me, I think that is a big part of the coaching mindset of the leader, is they work with people to develop them, for future roles, for their own future, for the organization's future, and trust that if people are getting a good developmental process, they may stay longer, because it's so valuable to them, and they will become better workers, better leaders themselves in the future. So I think to me, coaching leadership is all about developing people, growing people.
Absolutely. I know that one of the problems where someone that isn't being challenged in that sort of nature, they tend to sort of work in an autopilot, with an autopilot mentality, where they're sort of not very engaged with what they're doing, and they're sort of almost working automatically. And that opens up a lot of problems, not only long term, it opens up the potential for depression, but it also sort of, it may mean that they're a lot less alert to worksite accidents and everything like that. So Aly, can you share any experiences with the training that you've provided with the company that you've sort of walked into? I know you did mention one before, where someone was had made a big improvement in their leadership style, and they'd become a lot more likable than what they had been. But any other experiences that you can share with us with something that really stood out
without breaching confidentiality? I did work a few years ago with a group of health and safety, I don't know if they were called officers, but their job was to promote and ensure health and safety in the construction workplaces they worked within. And I sort of started the day with them, and they were in that sort of frustrated, cross with people because people weren't doing the right things sort of mode, which is a slightly punitive mode. It'll come out in their tone and in their interventions with people. And I think I had to challenge them around that definition. Really, leadership is stepping up and owning results. And as health and safety people, if you're not getting the results you need from the people, then you need to step up and do things differently. So really helping them to take a coaching approach to the oversight that they were doing, rather than a oversight punitive sort of approach, compliance approach. And I think through that experience, I developed a little set of health and safety coaching questions for them. Just questions that leaders can use within regular catch-ups. That's another big strategy that the engagement research is showing that has a huge impact on people's well-being, is regular catch-ups with their leader.
Right.
And even if they are short, even if they are 10 minutes. So that example of the 5x5 conversation, just that time spent with the leader cares enough to spend time with his people, has a huge impact on people's well-being and engagement. So regular catch-ups would be another big encouragement from me for leadership. And interestingly, that research showed that the worst thing you can do for someone's engagement is to ignore them. Even negative time spent with their leader did better for people's engagement than no time at all. And if people had a positive, helpful experience of time with the leader, it was massive. It was like 1,800 times more impactful on engagement than no time at all. And you used the term boredom before, and I think that's almost the opposite of engagement, is boredom. People who've lost their spark, lost their interest in the work. Huge impact on quality. It's like they quit and stay, they quit and stay in your team without really making the contributions that you need them to be making. So it's all about engagement. Impacts on every other success criteria of a team or an organization.
Yeah, fantastic. Aly, imparting any top sort of 3 ideas that you can share with construction company directors, and ways in which they can sort of get started with implementing a new strategy with leadership?
I would say get clear on what leadership approach you want to see throughout the organization, model it from the top, but talk about that with your leaders, and then be willing to hold people accountable to that. If you have a commitment to positive leadership, then make sure that if you see examples where it's not positive leadership, that their leader is kind of stepping up, holding people accountable to the leadership approach.
Yes.
Yeah, I think spending more time, as I said, talking about these sorts of things, investing time in talking with teams about teamwork, and leaders spending time individually, little catch-ups with people.
Yeah, sure thing. Aly, just a question that I thought of. I promised to make this the last one.
Okay.
Construction workplace, construction sites are very diverse culturally.
I was thinking that myself this morning.
So where does, for a leader, what do they need to be sort of aware of, or what's their approach when they're sort of talking, if they're engaging with a very diverse workforce? What do they need to keep in mind to ensure that their communication is effective across different sort of cultural groups? What sort of experience, or what have you seen to work well in circumstances like this?
I think that's probably the topic of another podcast, but
yeah, true.
I've actually got a huge construction project at the top of my street at the moment.
Yes.
And walking from my place to the top of the street is like traveling the world at the moment, in terms of the workers having little morning teas beside their cars, hugely diverse workforce.
Sure.
And I probably think that leaders have a huge responsibility to keep increasing their cultural competence, not just their awareness, but their ability to work with people who are different to themselves, which to me is a huge learning process, being constantly willing to learn, and using this fabulous resource you've got, which is your own people who are very culturally diverse, but being willing to learn from them and help them step up into leadership roles where your cultural competence is not sufficient to do a good job.
Yeah.
So we tend to use words like inclusive. We've got to make sure our teams are can include people who are from different backgrounds, cultures, socioeconomic, gender, the difference. We can create inclusive cultures. And, to me, that's the same stuff, really. It's caring, it's respect, it's learning. And I think that's another big piece of the coaching leadership approach, is leaders who are constantly ready and willing to learn, who feel they don't know it all already and constantly looking for the learning opportunities themselves.
Open-mindedness, isn't it? To improve and learn more. Aly, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to ensure that I have all your contact details below the video link, so people can contact you directly to learn more about the services that you provide. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Aly.
Raphael. Great to talk with you.
Great to talk with you. Okay, bye-bye.